record button up. So what are we going to talk about today, Matt? All yours.
Okay, so you know what? It's an interesting thing. I think all the time. What am I going to talk about at the webinar? What are Scott and I going to banter back and forth about? And the so I settled on today. I hear so often the comment of somebody who has betrayed, like, how do I rebuild trust? Right. And I hear that so often. And obviously, I'm willing to go wherever, but I wanted to talk a little bit about this. And, I guess there's a part of me that thinks this is talked about enough, but maybe it's not.
It's not.
And so I'm going to go through a few things that come to mind. One of the things that I will say commonly, that the very first thing you need to do to rebuild trust is to share the truth. And although I won't go into this extensively, you can go into our back webinars. I think one of the best ways to do that, when there has, especially if there's been an addiction situation, is to do a full therapeutic disclosure, which we've talked multiple webinars about. And so the truth needs to be established. If the truth isn't put out there, you're not going to go anywhere. You need the truth to be shared and established. Now, with that being said, I don't think it's healthy for it to be a full disclosure that's not done with therapeutic intervention. Sometimes too much information can be shared that wouldn't be healthy. I'll let your individual therapists and you sort that out. But you must have the truth. And then in addition to that, there needs to be a consistency of truth. So you can't just do a therapeutic disclosure and then and call it good. Well, I shared the truth. The truth needs to continue to be shared. And by truth, I'm not just talking about, like, here's all the bad stuff. Like, I think there needs to be, like, here's the truth about the good stuff too. And here's, recently I had a slip up, or I engaged in a behavior that I told you I wouldn't, and I want you to know. Obviously, I've said this before, within 12 hours. So you start to establish patterns of behavior where the truth is coming forward. Okay, so I won't spend a ton more time on that unless there's any specific questions. But create a pattern, a consistent behavior. Then you move into one of my least favorite phrases that's used in recovery, is often used by betrayed partners. Now, hear me out. I understand why this phrase is used. The problem with it is it's so vague. And that is, if a betrayed partner, and the truth is, it doesn't need to be a betrayed partner. Somebody struggling with addiction could say the same thing. I don't feel safe, right? And essentially, the more that we have the truth that's shared with us consistently, the safer we start to feel. But if we can try and communicate, why don't we feel safe? A lot of times it's funny. I've heard, especially men, they'll say, it is so painful when my partner says that they don't feel safe because I've never even threatened them with physicality. And it's like there's a part of me that has to pause and go, in your mind, safety is physical. And that's it. You can't expand your thought process beyond the idea that it's this physical safety. I've thought a bit about that, and I can appreciate that. Well, dare I say that with men, maybe that's the type of safety they are most threatened with. Maybe because men tend to be a little bigger and stronger, than physical safety is what they think of when they feel unsafe. And I'm trying to be as compassionate as I can there, because there's a part of me that wants to lean in and go, oh my gosh, what about emotional safety? What about sexual safety? What about I mean, in some sense, spiritual safety, right? You get into all of it. Like there's so many realms of safety. So again, how do we work from establishing truth to establishing this safe environment? Again, consistency of behavior. And then you get to trust, because this is the question I get asked so much. How do I build trust? Well, show a pattern of behavior consistently over time. In fact, I was talking to a colleague this morning, just staffing a specific case, and she said something that everybody has probably heard. She said the greatest predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And so I sat with that today as I was working through sessions. And my thought was, if you want to establish trust in a relationship, make your current behavior your past behavior. And what I mean by that is start practicing new behavior right now so that it becomes the past. And the longer we can get away from our old behavior and we can create new behavior that now is our consistent past history, the quicker we're going to establish and build trust and safety with our partner. And this applies to everybody, right? Like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Sometimes my examples aren't the most amazing, but like if let's say I consistently am bouncing checks, not that anybody writes checks anymore, but maybe I'm hitting the overdraft, right? And my wife's getting frustrated and she's like, I don't feel like I can trust you with money. You're not paying attention. Well, if I want to change that and establish trust, I need to show her consistently that I'm paying attention and I'm not using money that we don't have, right? And so, but it's going to take a while to where she's realizing, wow, that hasn't happened for 6 months. That hasn't happened for 9 months. That hasn't happened for however long. And then she starts to lower that defensive or that fear or that anxiety, right? And so if I would say to my betrayed partners, especially, you got to calm down, relax, and start making the changes, trust will happen by establishing consistent behavior. Now I'm reaching to the 2:45 mark, which is where we start to open it up. What I want to do is very quickly, and if somebody wants to ask questions, we can go into this even further, but I want to establish a little bit of a framework here because it's often asked, what can I do? Well, somebody who's struggling with addiction, sometimes you've had your life so full of this unhealthy behavior that it's, well, what can I do? Well, there's lots of things you can do. And the truth is, you've got to try it. And so what are some things you can do? You can, again, the classic tried and true, go to a 12-step, get onto section relationship healing and do some of the drop-in groups, listen to podcasts, listen to books. And what's probably even more important in all of that, when you go to your meeting, if you go to a meeting, come home with a nugget like, hey, I heard this and that really made me think, and now I'm curious and I've been thinking about this or that. And I'm even better, start to talk about how you're noticing how you impacted your betrayed partner and how your past behavior has impacted your betrayed partner, right? Go to a drop-in group, and if you end up making a friend and connecting with somebody, share that with your partner. I just lost Scott, but share that with your partner that I made a friend, and then share with your partner. I've been reaching out to my friend, and it's been really good to talk and connect to somebody who understands me or who, it's been awkward. If it's awkward, talk about it being awkward, right? Start to share what's going on in your inner world. I think I talked about that last time, but what else can you do besides 12 steps and drop-in groups. Obviously, go to see a therapist and see your therapist consistently. See your therapist consistently. Talk about what you've learned at your therapist. Go to couples counseling if it's appropriate, right? Meaning your therapist has recommended it, your spouse is willing, or your partner is willing. Go to couples counseling. Talk about what feels like it's working. Talk about what doesn't feel like it's working. And that's the other thing. Like, don't just be positive. Don't sit there and think, I have to share how well I'm progressing, right? I think you can share what doesn't make sense to you and what frustrates you in the process and what you think feels like a bunch of hokey, whatever, right? Because that's sharing what's going on in your inner world. Read a book. Tell them what book you're reading. Now, you don't want to do all these things and lay it out there as if, here's all the things I'm doing so that you can see I'm being good, because then you're going to want to talk about, hey, throughout my life, I've tried to perform and do a bunch of good things to impress people. And so then if that's happening, share it. Tell your partner that. Be honest about it. Then as you start to do these things and share what's going on within yourself, you are going to build trust. You are going to build connection in the relationship. So I know I lost you for a second, Scott. I think you know exactly where I'm at anyway. So jump on in. What do we got?
Okay. Just heads up to Matt. There was some stuff in the chat feature and the Q&A that when I got booted out and come back in, I lose access to that. So you'll have to run us through. And
okay.
One really great question in the Q&A that I saw. Type your questions in the Q&A, but I've got some. And these are the questions that I get all the time from the guys that I work with, the cheaters, the male cheaters that I work with. Why won't she believe me? How can I make her believe me?
Oh, gosh.
And how long will this take? I have been telling the truth for a whole week. I haven't lied in a week. And she just still doesn't believe anything I say. And how can I make her understand I'm telling the truth? And you're laughing, and I laugh too. Like, you can't make her understand anything. You have to show her. But how do you respond to those? Like, if you get me in there and I'm like, why won't she believe me? How can I make her understand I'm telling the truth? And when will she start to believe me?
Yeah. So it's interesting because my brain immediately went to one of the best ways to help somebody know that you're telling them the truth is that you tell them truths that they know or that you know that you don't want them to hear. Right? So if you want your spouse to believe you, or your partner to believe you rather, either, whatever, then you need to be upfront about the truths that you know are going to hurt them or make them uncomfortable. You're not trying to hurt them. You're showing them that the truth is more important than managing their feelings. It's not to say that their feelings aren't important, but you can't even get to feelings, real feelings, unless they have the truth established. And so I think it's pretty important to, if you have a slip up, as terrified and as miserable as you feel and as scared as you are, you want to make her, in this case, believe you. Tell her you slipped up, whether you relapsed with alcohol or sex or whatever it is. And you might say, well, I might lose them. Well, you don't have them to begin with. If you're not telling them the truth, you don't have them. You don't have a relationship if you're not telling the truth. So if you want to make them believe you, and I'm going to use that I'm going to use that in a weird way, right? Because you can't make anybody. But if you want to make them believe you, tell them the truth, good and bad, right? And let them decide, empower them, because you've taken away their power in a sense by betraying them. You took away their right to truth and trust and connection in the relationship. So give that back to them and let them decide, right? So if you want to make them believe, tell them the truth. And you're like, well, I did. Okay, but are you telling them the truths that are hard for them to hear too? Like, yeah, I'm struggling today. I'm tempted and I hate this feeling and I'm wondering if it's worth it, right? Are you telling them those truths? Well, that might freak them out. Yeah, you're right. It might. But guess what? It's honesty. And that's pretty necessary in order to have somebody believe you. So that was a quick piece that I thought of. Scott, what other questions, or do you want me to talk about that more?
That's a lot of the advice that I give. Tell the truth, tell it faster.
Tell it faster. One. That's right.
Tell it before they ask.
Oh gosh.
Don't just tell them what they already know. Tell them everything.
Oh yeah.
Don't just admit to what you think they already know.
You've got all of it. You've got such a better answer to this one. How about we switch places? I'll be the host.
No, I get this all the time.
No, you do. And that honestly, those answers are beautiful. You're right. Tell it faster. Don't just tell them what they want to hear. Oh, the one that I love is tell them before they ask. That one drives me crazy. They're like, if I'm talking to somebody and they're like, yeah, I had a slip. And I was like, oh, okay. Did you check it in with your spouse? Yes, I checked it in. Okay. And then I find out, yeah, they asked. And I'm like, you missed an opportunity.
Right.
They asked. I'm so glad you said yes. Okay. Let's just praise you for being honest. Good job. And next time, tell them before they ask. Like, yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh my God, honey. I'm so sorry. And this is about everything. When you asked me if I took the trash out and I said, yes, I didn't, I'll do it right now. I'm so sorry I lied about it. I mean, everything. It's not
everything.
About slipping and relapsing. And it's in all aspects of your life with everyone.
Oh yeah. The other day, I mean, it's the silliest thing. And I used to, I mean, I think I've talked about this before early in my marriage, because of some unhealthy prodependence on my part. I don't know how else to say that. My wife would ask me to do something and then she'd be like, oh, did you do that? And I'd be like, yeah. And then I'd figure out how to go do it without her knowing, and just the other day, something hit me and I was like, I told her I would do this and I haven't done it. So then I went and did it. And then I told her I totally didn't do that. And I said I would, and I want you to know I did, and it's like, why? Because I want her to know that I'm a person of my word and that I wasn't just going to act like I did it when she said or asked me to. Does that make sense? It's like learning how to do that is not easy. It's uncomfortable, but that's how we have deeper, better relationships.
Yeah. And when you come clean about something, they should not have to ask follow-up questions. I mean, they probably will, but you should have already answered anything that they could possibly have a follow-up question for. You've got to come clean with all of it.
Oh yeah.
Don't make them turn into Sherlock Holmes. It's not very, they don't like, betrayed partners don't like being Sherlock Holmes.
Oh,
they don't like to have to do that.
Nobody, I don't mean this in a bad way. Sherlock Holmes didn't have relationships. And so the reality of it is that you don't build a relationship by being Sherlock Holmes. So that's not fair to the betrayed partner at all.
Yeah. So let me ask you the flip side to this, and then we'll jump into the chat and the questions. So type some questions in, please. How long does it take most addicts to stop lying? And
gosh.
Secrets, and how hard is it to do that?
I don't have hard numbers here. And
question with no answer, but
yeah, that is such a difficult one. Sometimes it depends. It's really interesting when I've seen addicts who have been caught, but it's like a more extreme situation. Like maybe there's this legal consequence. They've been caught, like it's really, rather than just like been caught by a spouse. Sometimes I've seen that scare people enough that they start telling the truth right away. It kind of depends on, I've also had I've also had addicts where like they're honest right at the start of recovery, like because it's kind of like they know the gig's up, and I've seen that happen. That doesn't always mean they're the most cooperative in recovery, but like, so I mean, honesty for some people can be a bigger piece than for others. It's not to say anybody who struggles with addiction is a liar. I mean, I mean, I don't, okay, how about this? I think in one way or another, they're all lying, right? But
Okay,
some people, what's that?
Thank you. I was going to have to be like, Matt.
Right. But what I'm trying to kind of delineate that as best I can from, like, there are people who their compulsive lying might be worse than their compulsive addictive behavior. Does that make sense? So it's like, I think there's this spectrum. It kind of, I've had people where I've watched them go through recovery, and I'm like, and they've been able to say, you know what, the truth is lying is my biggest problem. And this is going to be far harder for me to kick. And it's taken, I mean, years, if ever, for some people. And other people, I would say, if I were just to make a rough guess, if you've got somebody who's really active in recovery, it'll take them at least 6 months before they even have the self-awareness to realize how often they're lying.
It was my second year of recovery. Now, I was not in a relationship, so I didn't have a partner constantly calling me out on my lies. But it was my second year of recovery where I would sit in a 12-step meeting, the safest place in the world, or therapy, the safest place in the world, and something would come out of my mouth, and about 30 seconds later, I'd be like, that wasn't true at all. And I'd have to apologize. I'd say, that thing I said 30 seconds ago wasn't true at all, and I don't know why I said it. Just for no reason. It was such an ingrained habit. It was like, once I realized, oh my God, I lie all the time. I better stop.
Well, and that's the funny thing is, I was actually running a group last night, sometime this week, and there was a conversation amongst these individuals who struggle with addiction, and it was like, I lied so much I believed my own lies. Like, and it took me a long time to even realize that I was lying when it's like obvious now. And it was like this phenomenon, like, and this whole group discussion around like this concept of I deceived myself more than I deceived anybody. And it was like, okay, great conversation. But that's how pervasive I think lying can be, that the biggest deception is yourself. And then you just wreck relationships. The one thing I've actually worked really hard in teaching my kids is, like, I don't care. Like, obviously I care what you do, but like, the one thing I tell you, you're not allowed to do is lie to me. You want to destroy trust. And it's been the coolest thing as I've pushed that with my children. And then honestly, with my friends, it's like, if you lie to me, you're going to destroy our relationship, And so what I ask from any relationship is just tell me the truth. And I've had clients where I've said, I'll be honest, you've lied to me so much, I need to see a regular polygraph. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to be helpful for us, because it's hard for me to know. And people have been a little bit shocked. And I'm like, but look at the history of behavior. Anyway.
And, there's research on this. I mean, most betrayed partners are more hurt by the lies and secrets than by the actual behavior. Ultimately,
that research is most. The research is very clear on that. The lying is the most betraying behavior. We can deal with people's problems, imperfections. I mean, I've seen married people, partnered people, I've seen them get through the most wild things, and where I've thought, how are you guys going to make it? But they get through it because there's honesty. And it's wild to me. I think, wow, the resiliency is amazing because they've been able to find a place of honesty and work through it.
Yeah, AA acronym for denial is don't even know I'm lying, and please don't parse that out because there's no K in denial. But but I mean, and this is what addicts, this is what we do. We don't even know we're lying.
I love that you just said that, and I don't even know that I would have. I did the letters in my head, and I was like, yeah, that all checks out.
Nope, not quite, but it's close enough. So, oh my God, let's jump to the Q&A in the chat, and I can see like one chat and one Q&A. So you're gonna.
Okay, so let me start with in the chat. Somebody said they threatened us with a lack of fidelity. That's physical. So that was talking about the types of safety, and I will honor that all day long. You better believe it. The infidelity is physical safety, obviously sexual safety. I mean, which can very much be physical. There's an emotional dynamic to that as well. That is terrible, and so absolutely, infidelity. If in the case of infidelity. Absolutely, that's physical safety. In fact, I've worked with so many betrayed partners in that realm where I've told them you need to go to your doctor and get STD tested, and they're like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "No, you need to do it. Like your physical safety's at risk here. If there any chance of an STD can raise, various forms of cancer, like cervical cancer and things like that. It's like." You absolutely get yourself taken care of and do regular STD tests or STI tests just to make sure that you stay physically healthy. And so absolutely, gosh, thank you for pointing that out.
And there's research that shows betrayed partners suffer from symptoms of PTSD when they find out.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And PTSD is what we get when our life is threatened. And when relationship trust is threatened, this is the person who's supposed to care for us and have our back and keep us safe. And if we can't trust them anymore, who can we trust? Suddenly the whole world feels dangerous. And that's, that's a physical fear.
Absolutely. So the next part in the chat, I think was kind of a list. Somebody was trying to help me out with a list of different things that a partner could, or I'm sorry, somebody struggling with addiction could do. So a Celebrate Recovery group can be a great thing. It doesn't even have to be addiction specific. You could do as a betrayed partner, in addition to seeing a CSAT, there's various webinars like on We Tonglen, sex and relationship healing. Let's see. So lots of different things that we can do. So that would, I think, clears out the chat. And then the very first Q&A question, which I don't think Scott can see, it says, trying to find information on when you feel ready to move to the next step and start rebuilding the relationship and move forward in the bedroom. So yay, we're talking about sex. Couples that have moved forward and are rebuilding the relationship, where are they not finding much? Basically, they're not finding much on this. And there is some resources out there. There's a book written by, oh gosh,
Masters and Johnson Sensate Focus. I don't know if that's one you were thinking about, but that's a good one.
I wasn't thinking about that one. That one's not recovery specific.
No. Doesn't Alex Katahakis have one?
Oh my gosh. Alex Katahakis has some amazing stuff. Now suddenly the name of her clinic escapes me. Alex Katahakis has some excellent stuff on intimacy and recovery. So she does really good work. I have another book. I swear it's a workbook, and I want to poke my head over and see if I can find it really fast. Let me see.
But I'll fill in for Matt here. We get asked this question quite a lot, and often it's the addict, because sometimes the addict is like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to re-engage sexually with my wife or my partner, because I don't know if my sobriety is strong enough yet. Whereas the betrayed partner might be ready. Maybe the betrayed partner is ready before the addict. So go ahead, Matt.
So to be honest with you, I'm like, oh, I wonder if somebody borrowed that one because I can't find it. Now I'm trying to look this up real fast.
Oh. There's stuff about healthy sexuality. I mean, when I'm working with betraying partners, the cheaters, I say, okay, you got to start with self-care, and then start with just feeling your own senses, like, get some fresh cut flowers and enjoy the scent. You got to work, and then enjoy relationship intimacy with someone other than your partner. And by relationship intimacy, I mean like Matt and I having a conversation like, man, Matt, I had a terrible day yesterday. Can I talk to you? That kind of relationship intimacy. And then work up to that kind of relationship intimacy with your betrayed partner, and then non-sexual intimacy. And then maybe you can move into sexual intimacy. And then the seventh aspect of relationship intimacy is what we call spiritual intimacy, is when you can take your sexual actions with each other to mean something more than just we're having sex. It means we love each other. It means we're communing, connecting. Okay, Matt, did you find it?
Yeah, for the life of me, I am suddenly struggling, and it's driving me crazy because it's I can see it in my head. But what I would encourage you to do, well, one, I think it's really important to work with a good couples therapist on this. I think that that is actually a wonderful area. And it was so interesting. I was attending a conference actually this last weekend on sexual health. And the presenter was basically saying that a couple who has sex 10 times or less in a year is in a sexless marriage. And then went on to say that 90% of the time, in a heterosexual normative relationship, that is actually the male's issue. Like, that's the male's fault. I don't know how else to say that. And so it's really interesting because let's see here. It's interesting to me because a lot of times and I'm going to speak from a sex addiction perspective here. When you have somebody who has had such an unhealthy relationship with sex, rebuilding the sexual relationship for them oftentimes is this brand new, never before experience, because to learn how to have actual intimacy in sex is so difficult. And so a lot of times the person struggling with addiction is like, when are we gonna have sex? When are we gonna have sex? When are we gonna have sex? And it's like, when are you going to be able to use sex as a tool of connection, right? When are you going to be able to reach to your partner in vulnerability and essentially say, I want to connect? And when can you connect and not have it be pressure around being sexual? Right. So I don't actually feel like I'm answering this question very well. But I think it's important to be having a lot of conversations around like our attitudes and beliefs around sex. I think Sue Johnson has some really good bits on the levels of sex. She talks about sealed off sex is where it's just about novelty and intensity. And it's really just about one person getting off. And I've had a lot of people that will say to me, no, it was really important to me that my sexual partner have a good experience. And I will say to them, yeah, that may have been important, but was it to fuel your own ego, right? Was it to make you feel like a better sexual partner? And if that's the case, it's not about connection between the two of you. It's not about this shared experience. So that would be sealed off sex. The next level of sex is what she refers to as solace sex. Solace sex is like where sex becomes the barometer in the relationship. It's like, hey, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling disconnected. Oh, we had sex. Okay, now we're good. Now we're okay. As if sex is this this barometer that says, all right, we're in an okay place, we're in a good place. It's not. But she talks about that being a step up because it's still like, even from a prodependent standpoint, like it's this longing and desire to connect, even if we're not using it, even if we're using it as the tool for connection, it's not sealed off, if that makes sense. So then the highest form of sex that Sue Johnson talks about is what she refers to as secure synchrony sex. And I love it because when I talk to my couples about this, in that experience, one person can proposition their partner for sex, and that person can say to their partner, you know what, I'm really not in the mood. And they can be like, oh, well, that's disappointing. I was hoping, but that's fine. Your rejection wound doesn't come flying out and coming out all over the room. Like, you can be disappointed, but if your rejection wound is coming out everywhere, if you're taking it deeply personal that you don't love me, you don't care about me, it's like, no, I just didn't want to have sex. Like, right? Like, I'm not in that frame of mind right now. Secure synchrony sex is, it could be, I'm not in the mood, and the other person says, okay, no worries. It could also be, hey, are you up for a quickie? And it's like, yeah, sure. That sounds like fun, right? Like, it doesn't have to be, and this is one thing I'll tell my betrayed partners, because a lot of times my betrayed partners had so much disconnection in sex that they want this really big, like, elaborate buildup, and I don't blame them. They're like, hey, I'm hungry, I'm starving for it. Like, give me the romance, give me the intimacy, give me the buildup before going to sex. Like, I don't blame them, but I also have to say, hey, it's okay that it's simple and quick sometimes, right? And it's meaning, do what you're comfortable with. And it doesn't need to be long and drawn out, but at the same time, if you want it long and drawn out, sometimes make sure you get that, right? That's healthy for you. So hopefully this is explaining some of that. I think to get to that level, we have had to build typically a bit of trust and connection. You've got to feel physically safe, emotionally safe. A lot of times, in order to have that be occurring, I don't think that you have to wait a prescribed amount of time. I think sometimes people set these deadlines of, I need 6 months of sobriety. And we have to be careful, because I've had people struggling with addiction say, oh, I need 6 months of sobriety. And I'm like, hey, be careful you're not moving into sexual anorexia, right? So it's this, we've got to work together to try and figure out when is the time right for both, but at the same time, it's not a punishment and it's not a reward either. So how's that for a crazy amount of information?
I think that's great. And I mean, I think the really key point is it has to be right for both of you. And that will happen when it happens. And, you know, while you were away, I was talking, a lot of times the betrayed partner is ready before the addict is ready. The addict's still too scared or still too disconnected from sex. And but I like what you said about, hey, sometimes, you know, a quicky's just fine. A quickie can be great. We have to accept, you know, that we don't always have to have this deep, intimate, like, emotional.
Well, see, but that's the cool thing about secure synchrony sex, is that we aren't using sex to feel secure with each other. And so a quickie doesn't make us feel any less secure or more secure. Secure synchrony sex is fun. It's playful. It's adventurous, if you will. Does that make sense? And so, like, the sex in and of itself doesn't need to be what makes us secure. We're secure with the different things within the sexual relationship because we're already secure. And sex is then just secure and enjoyable because it's part of our relationship. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think that's great. How do you get straight answers rather than vague answers around the betrayal when pornography is the betrayal?
How do you get straight answers rather than vague answers?
the same as any other kind of betrayal. I mean,
Yeah, that's like my guess is there's more to this question that I'm not reading into. Because I'm trying to go, well, why does pornography betrayal make it more vague?
yeah. Well, here's a thought. Number one, porn is really easy to hide. It's just super easy to hide, so it's super easy to keep it secret. And number two is, how do we define porn? If I'm going on Instagram and scrolling through pictures of women, technically it's not porn, but if I'm using it like porn, it's porn.
Well, and that's the problem, I guess. One of the age-old debates. I think there was a Supreme Court comment one time that was basically
Potter Stewart. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's Potter Stewart. He said,
I don't know how to define pornography,
but I know it when I see it.
But I know it when I see it.
Yeah. Which was a punt by the Supreme Court. It was like, don't ask me to tell you what's obscene and what's not, because we all have a different opinion. I know what I think is obscene, is what he was saying.
Right.
But I can't tell you what's obscene. That case was a punt.
Right. And so here's the hard part. Like, if I'm a spouse whose partner is looking at swimsuit pictures, that could easily be pornography, because that's what it's being used for, if that makes sense. And somebody else could be looking at it and it's not being used for that. They're perusing photos for whatever other reason, and it's like, hey, what you looking at? Oh, I was checking out blah blah blah, whatever, right? And I'm typically it's like, I'm not hiding the behavior, right? So I think vague answers often happen out of fear, and so I would probably lean into that. The answers feel vague. I'm wondering if you're feeling fear, what's going on? Right. That's probably where I would go. But at the same time, I think there might be more to that question that I'm just not understanding.
Entirely possible. I like this next one. As a betrayed partner, I feel like I have to be a therapist to my sex addict husband. As I mentioned to him calmly, that nothing matters more than honesty with a simple yes or no answer to my question. Yet he continues to start with deceit on info that's black and white. We get defensive, basically. Then I become loud and ugly. Is there any hope? That's a great question.
Actually, what you just described was your cycle of disconnection. And the fact that you can see it actually shows that there's hope, because if you can see the cycle, then you can work on stopping it. It's not the easiest book to read, but I love it. It's Sue Johnson's Hold Me Tight. She actually talks about the cycles of disconnection. She kind of outlines them and defines them, and then gives a lot of different examples of how we disrupt those cycles. And so, let's see. First of all, feeling like you have to be a therapist, that I would actually check that in right away. Hey, I feel like I have to be a therapist. That means I'm feeling like I'm in a role of superiority.
Yeah, I'm the parent.
I'm the parent. That's another easy way to say it. I'm in the mentor role. I'm in the parent role. And automatically, if I'm in the parent role, even if I'm being calm, likely your sex addicted spouse, I think in this case, doesn't know how to do peer-to-peer relationships very well anyway, necessarily. And so if you can own, hey, I'm in a parent role, that must mean I'm feeling hurt or scared. I'm feeling confused. And so I'm coming to you, asking you to help me, show up for me in my confusion, show up for me in my hurt. And so you basically say, you need honesty. You get a simple yes or no. And then obviously it's going to feel like there's deceit. So then you're going to need to ask, like, hey, I need more, I need some more clarity. I need to know, why is it yes? I think I'm reading this right. Why are you answering with a yes or no? Can you give me more information?
She wants a yes or no. She just wants a black and white yes or no. Like,
Oh,
you look at porn? Yes, I'm sorry, I looked at porn. And
right.
then
Okay.
and then he gets defensive.
Okay. So
Um,
then what I would go to is, hey, help me understand why it's not a simple yes or no. Are you nervous? Are you scared? Is it not black and white to you? Right? Like, because for me, I'm going to want to know, why in the world is this such a hard question to answer? I wouldn't ask it that way, because that's going to sound super condescending. Like, what's wrong with you that you can't see this black and white? I would ask, hey, sometimes a yes or no would be the best feeling in the world for me. How come it feels like you can't go that way? Are you worried about my response? Are you scared that I'm going to be angry? Right? And when you say, then I become loud and ugly, well, that might be part of the problem, right? Now, at the same time, you becoming loud and ugly isn't the problem. It's the cycle that's the problem. I'd be loud and ugly if I was being lied to as well. Like, it's so painful. So I would try to slow that down and have a conversation around how that pattern works for you guys, and see if he notices it as well, and start asking questions about why a basic black and white answer isn't being shared. That's where I would go. But yes, there's hope, because you can see the pattern.
yeah. This next one here, I keep hearing about couples who want to reinitiate or reengage sexually and when it's appropriate, which we talked about. I just want to know if my husband will ever want to engage with me, since he's always presented as more of a sexual anorexic, and then there's a follow-up that she likes sexually avoidant, which is my preferred term too, but a lot of people use anorexic. Either way, is this
Sexually avoidance fine.
Yeah, is this an intimacy issue or something else? He's been a porn addict for 40 years. We've been together for 16 years. Is there hope that he can learn to be intimate and have healthy sex? Just as an FYI, we have porn addiction work groups, and we do cover this in the level 2 work groups. So go on to seekingintegrity.com and find the work groups button, and I actually teach those. So
Yeah.
I love this question.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely check out what Scott's doing with the work group for sure. Let's see here. So somebody in the comments, I think it was sexual reintegration, Bill and Ginger Burkaw. That's the one that I was looking for. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, where the heck did my workbook go? Somebody stole it. But so they have a good a model. I've heard them speak before. They've done some good work there as well. And let's see here. So as far as this particular question, you want to know if he will ever engage with you. Yeah, I don't blame you. I'd want to know too. And is it an intimacy issue? I mean, based on what I've seen, yes. Sexual intimacy, emotional intimacy. Somebody who's been a porn addict for that long has learned to have a sexual experience completely isolated. And people often think, oh, well, it can escalate. No, somebody can sit in a porn addiction for the rest of their lives and be nigh unto celibate, because that's the safest place in the world for them. It's super unhealthy. It's really sad, like the opportunity that they're missing out on. And really, they're just fantasizing about what they wish they could have, not realizing that what they're viewing is so far removed from what the healthy possibility is. It's just terribly sad. And for you as a betrayed partner to essentially realize that you've lost that possibility currently is awful and so painful. Now, is there hope? Yeah. I mean, I struggle at any point to not say that there's hope, because we have to do the work, and everybody's journey is going to be a little bit different. What are you attending Scott's group? Are you talking about this and reading books about it? Are you exploring sexual anorexia or sexual avoidance? Are you working on it? Now, you as a betrayed partner, there's only so much you can do. In fact, you may have to surrender that. I would have conversations with him about it. I would invite him to try some of the, like Scott's group. But do I think there's hope? Yeah. Now, if you get to a place where you don't think there's hope, can you stay in the marriage if there isn't sexual intimacy? And that's the struggle I think we run into. Are you okay if it doesn't change? Does the relationship work for you? Some people say yes, some people say no. But I would fight for it. I would do everything I could to progress it forward, and then ultimately surrender that I've done all I can. And now I've got to figure out, can I stay in this or move forward? And hopefully along in that process, he makes the changes and you guys have a really healthy sexual relationship.
I think every kind of addiction is a form of an intimacy disorder. I learned early in my life through neglect or abuse or inconsistent parenting, whatever, that the people who are supposed to love me and meet my emotional needs won't, or can't be trusted to do it consistently. So I learned early in my life to turn to something that didn't necessarily meet my needs emotionally, but distracted me from my needs emotionally. And that turns out often to be things like alcohol or porn or drugs or whatever. And those things never say no to us. They're safer. I don't have to risk. I don't have to be vulnerable with porn. There's no intimacy with porn. I never, ever get my actual need for emotional or sexual intimacy met with porn. But it's a whole lot safer than even my wife, who I love more than anything in the world, than risking being sexual with her. Maybe I can't perform. Maybe she's not attracted to me. Maybe this, maybe that. Maybe she'll say no. Maybe she'll laugh at me. It's scary to be vulnerable with another person. It's easy to be sexual with porn.
Yeah, I was actually watching Barry McCarthy, who's written a lot of books on human sexuality. I think he's got Barry, and I'm trying to remember his wife's name all of a sudden. But I was watching him speak, and he was talking about 90% of the time, sexlessness in marriage is the men's issue. And he talks about like that it tends to happen when the man first has his performance issue. And so I am by no means an expert on this. Like, I actually love the subject and plan to continue to study more around. I love studying stuff about couples and sexuality. And so it's a lot of fun. But he suggests, the way that I interpreted it was that when a man has like this experience where he realizes he can't keep an erection until the end of climax, specifically during intercourse, that like, and I kept trying to get some clarity from him, but the way that I heard it, the way I understood it was that there's like this psychological issue there that like he's broken. And especially because porn teaches all these really unhealthy attitudes and beliefs around sex, that rather than just accepting the fact that these sexual experiences are actually fluid, that you might lose your erection and then as a couple work to get it back. And that's normal and that's okay. But because there's this psychological issue around performance, that why as a culture we might move to sexual performance enhancing drugs, which many are aware of, right? And we might even lie to our spouse about it, or lie to a sexual partner that we're even using it, because we are so afraid of not being masculine in this case, right? And so when we talk about sexual avoidance or sexual anorexia, and we talk about sexual addiction and the intimacy disorders that are going on here, this is like a major, like, we're diving into the sexual psyche of somebody who, in essence, has been sexually underdeveloped, sexually misguided, right? I have a lot of my betrayed partners that will actually say, well, I just assumed because of all their porn use or their sexual behavior or promiscuity that they were way more versed on sexuality than me. So maybe I've tried to follow their lead. And I'm like, no, if they've got sexual compulsivity as part of their history, they've got a lot of unhealthy sexual attitudes and beliefs. You want to do your own work. So for women, I've often recommended the book by Emily Nagoski called Come As You Are. That is a play on words. And the book is all about women's sexual health. I think the subtitle is the new science of women's sexuality or something like that. And I'm telling you, I read that book and learned more about my own sexuality studying women's sexuality, going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So much of this stuff helps me to understand basically these male normative views around sexuality and how they've messed with us as a culture, that I think there's so much work that needs to be done. And I think there's a lot of really good work that has been done. Alex Ketahakis and others, Emily Nagoski, and if we get into this and start studying it, like I said, Barry McCarthy, I heard him speak this last weekend, and I had previously read some of his stuff that I thought was really good. So there's a lot of people out there who are doing a lot of good work around this, but in a relationship where sexual betrayal is really at the heart, we have to go in and go, all right, let's rototill this garden and let's figure out how to start over with some fresh soil, even though you kind of can't, but like you really got to go in there and try to start anew. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, I think it is. We may have to do like a webinar on how to, on what healthy sexuality is.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So this one we could go on forever today, I think, because this has been like great questions.
Do you want to copy some of these down, and we can?
I did, and I can't copy out of the chat feature, but I'm going to leave this room open until I can figure out how to do this question. I gave an answer, which was a link to an article, but I want to bring that whole question back next week. So I am going to copy a couple of these and bring them back.
Cool.
Next week, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
It's actually going to be 3 weeks because 5th Friday is next week. Then the first Friday would be Debbie McCrae. And then I'm the one after that. So it'll be the second Friday in November.
And please remember, everybody, unless you live in Arizona, there's a time change.
Yes.
So it's going to be an hour earlier next week, unless you live in one of those weird areas of the country where the time doesn't change.
Yeah.
One of those weird and intelligent areas of the country where the time doesn't change.
Hey, send me these, Scott, and I'll dive in. I'll see if I can dive in and grab some other resources and see if I can present a little bit more on this.
Okay, I'm going to do that. So the room's going to be open for a minute, everybody, but we're done. I'll let Matt go. It's Friday afternoon. So I'll see you in 3 weeks, Matt, and please join us, everybody. We'll see you then.
Yep, and thank you, everybody. I love that you guys show up. I love that you ask these fun questions. I actually like it when I get questions where I'm like, I don't know. I'm probably going to need to do a little bit more around this. So keep showing up, and you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, guys, I got everything. We'll see you in a couple weeks.